Welcome to the Relocated South African, the show for navigating immigration from South Africa for a better future. I'm your host, Jan Hugo from Lagos in Portugal. Just note that we've recently launched our brand new website, www.therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. If you want to interact with us or comment on our discussions or even participate in an interview, please contact me either on relocatedsoutafrican@gmail.com or jan@therelocatedsoutafrican.com. Also, if you like our content, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? So today I welcome from Florida in the USA, wife, mother, and may I say, activist for South Africans in the US, Andrea Shea. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me, Jan. I've been watching some of your episodes and I just think it's great what you're doing. So thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Obviously, I'd love to touch on your online activities and the stuff that you do. But to start off, can you just give us a short history, where you're from, how long you've been in the States, family, etc.?
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in South Africa, as you may know. I was born in Pretoria. We were kind of all over the place. We went from Pretoria to the Eastern Cape, Graaff-Reinet, and then back to Potchefstroom, which is where my stepdad grew up. And then from there, we immigrated to the United States on something called the diversity visa. You may have heard of that before. It's the green card lottery. And my mother had applied for this actually for 10 years before we got it. And we had tried to go to Canada before, but my dad, or my stepdad, I should say, at the time was too old for the type of visa that we were trying to apply for. It was something like entrepreneurs or skills visa, I think. So yeah, that didn't pan out. So from the grace of God, I guess, we were accepted into the diversity visa. I think it's only like, don't quote me on this, but it's less than 100,000 people, I think, a year that they accept through that. Then I finished my high school degree in South Africa. I actually started studying medicine in South Africa. Oh, it took me an extra year to get in there just because of, the very super strict race laws in South Africa. And then when I got here, I kind of switched gears and still kind of in the medical field. I did my biology degree, later went on to do a master's degree in biostatistics. Ended up doing research at a teaching university here, and then also did a bit of real estate, did a bit of this and that. So I've been all over, but right now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And like you've mentioned before, I do a lot of activism on X. So that's pretty much me.
I have to say, you're the second person that I've ever met that was successful on that program, because believe me, I applied 100 times, but I had no luck. But there was a guy that I worked with that also got in. I don't think he ever went, but yeah, it was a very scarce opportunity.
Incredibly scarce, I have to say. I know of one other couple. They're also South African, whom I've met through. We have a church group, Afrikaans church that we started back in Tampa. And they said, yep, they got in with a diversity visa. That's literally only other people I've ever heard from that, yeah, were successful with that. So, yeah.
That's incredible. And you stay at home, Mom, and you said to me that number 2's on the way?
Yeah, number 2's on the way. He's going to be here in the end of January, so the 21st. So I'm about halfway done.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. And I wish you well. So that's great news. And your husband, you mentioned before, and he's a pilot.
Yes, that's correct. He's a commercial pilot. He's, he travels quite a bit for work. He may be, gone from the house maybe 3 or 4 days, every week, so it's tough, but, it pays the bills. So that's good.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I have 2 pilots. One is retired captain on BA, and one is still a captain on Virgin, who live in the same area and play golf at the same golf club. And always very interesting, entertaining stories to listen to those guys. So,
especially, with like the airlines and you're actually carrying passengers, that can get very interesting. People can be very interesting, in enclosed spaces. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So you guys are based in Pompano Beach. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, it's Pompano Beach. It's a little beach town. It's about 30 minutes north of Miami. And there's a bunch of little towns kind of on the coast. It's not very big.
It's between Boca and Fort Lauderdale. Most important, it's close to West Palm Beach.
Yeah, it's close to West Palm Beach. Exactly. Yes. No. We've got we've got Mar-a-Lago on one side. Funnily enough, so we lived in Tampa before, so that was on the West Coast, and we decided to move here because my husband was actually commuting from there, and that's like a 3-hour drive across the state, and that just wasn't really working out for us. So we moved down here. And we found there's two like South African shops down here. They sell like everything, everything you think of, like boerewors and all those little imported goodies. I just talked to them actually. They're going to do like a catered event for me for a baby shower. So
awesome. Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in South Florida, just to let you know, there's two like Afrikaans / South African shops down here, which is really cool.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's good to know. I must say that, that's one thing that you find everywhere is the South Africans tend to congregate in places, and we have the same in Portugal. We have a lady that lived in Kimberley and makes the best boerewors. So it's kind of
so good, yeah.
And you can find Omar rusks and Savannahs and all the South African stuff.
Lovely. Yeah. It's so great. I mean, it's just, especially when you have like that kind of like little homesick feeling, just go pop down there and get a couple things, and you will see South Africans there. And a lot of the time they want to, they do like little rugby events, so you can go watch rugby there and everything. So that's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Has your husband been to SA?
Twice. We just met. And then recently we went, just for vacation. So he loves Cape Town, and I took him to the Kruger National Park. So he's seen that, so he's at least seen like the major attractions, if you will.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. So maybe we should get a little bit to the activism. Obviously, when you look at it's almost like it's just getting worse every time. I don't know, this afternoon I saw something about the Stellenbosch HR manager. I don't know if you've seen that video.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's just shocking. It just seems to be, I don't know what's going on. It's almost getting worse by the minute,
Yeah, look, I mean, it definitely is. It's kind of like that boiling frog kind of thing. And that's why, I've been telling people, like, if you have the means and opportunity to go somewhere, especially if you have young children, that's kind of like the biggest thing. You may have, enough resources to guarantee your safety, live comfortably, maybe, in a safe place like Cape Town, but that's not true for the majority of the country. As you may know, it's getting more and more unsafe. And with all the super racist employment laws and stuff, your kids are kind of like, that's where it's going to be the worst. It's going to be the worst for them, I feel like. So I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping, when's the next election? It's 2028, I think. I don't know. It does seem like the ANC is losing a lot of support, but you've got all these other little parties kind of creeping in, but nothing really looks super promising. People were kind of hoping the DA would, in this coalition would do a little bit better than they have been. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that I really liked so far from them. So who knows?
I think it's a bit like 2017. We were also hopeful when Cyril was elected, and it turned out to be a disaster. And I guess people have the same feeling about John Steenhuisen. It's almost like he sold his soul for that minister's job.
Yeah, it does seem like that. Look, it happens here too. People get into politics, they make grand promises, and then that paycheck hits, or they're able to do some insider trading, and then they forget all about the whole whatever like motivated them to get into politics. It's very common. So unfortunately, I think that's kind of what's going on. And having like a parliamentary system, I don't think it's a great fit for South Africa, because it's such a diverse country with so many different cultures of people. For us in the US, it would never work. That's why we have a republic. We wouldn't have 50 states. It wouldn't work. So we have representation from every state, through our electoral college. So it gives people in Kansas equal say as a giant state like California, which may be more left-leaning. It's more of a balance. I think it probably would have been a better fit for South Africa. It's a pity that after 94, the Americans didn't push their own system more. They ended up with this British parliamentary system, which I think it's not really ideal.
It's not working. No, I agree. And I guess just thinking about you as a person who lived in South Africa for a long time, and still, I assume there's still family connections and so on, and living in America, you kind of are in a way uniquely qualified. I guess that Colonel Chris Wyatt, he lived in South Africa as well, so he also comments a lot. And, the problem in South Africa is if you comment, you're a racist. That card gets played every time. And it's a very difficult situation. And I sometimes get the sense that, we've left, so we are now regarded as the enemy. We are bad. That Lamola idiot the other day was talking again about the refugees. Sorry, I mustn't say.
Yeah, Ronald or whatever, Ronald McDonald, that guy. Yeah. Yeah, he's the biggest clown of, I think I've never met such a dullard in my life, but he's he's up there. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So obviously, in my sense, and I'm asking you this question, do you think that the interaction between Trump and Ramaphosa changed the view in the US about what's going on in South Africa?
I think from what I know and the people I spoke to here, some contact I've had with the State Department is the US has been pretty clued up about what's going on in South Africa for many years. It's just that there wasn't really anyone that had the will to address it. It was just kind of status quo, which it happens a lot in the US where, it's a little country. It really doesn't affect the US actually what is going on in South Africa, whether we sanction the crap out of them or not. It doesn't really change anything. I mean, we have like really big fish to fry, as like there's a lot going on. So this was the first time that I think someone truly paid attention. Now, from what I know is, this Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he's been involved with a lot of South African expat groups for many years here. He was a senator in Florida. So he's been very clued up about South Africa. So I think there's been an active push from lower levels reaching President Trump. Obviously, like Elon Musk got involved and everything too, to actually address it. Now, in terms of like the outcome of that meeting, yeah, like I said, I think what's probably going to happen and where there's going to be the most support in Congress, because obviously to pass, any kind of bill related to South Africa, you're going to need some bilateral support, is they probably will sanction some of the politicians, but the angle they'll go for is the Iranian angle. That's the only thing I can see happening logically. I think the refugee program will go ahead as is. I don't know if it would ever get codified into law. Probably not. The response you got from some of these like super liberal people, who still think that it's like 1993. How could the ANC possibly be racist toward these Afrikaner people? So something like that. I don't know if it would ever get codified into law. So that's why we've really just been pushing for as many people to try and get out on this program and hope for the best, But if anything, probably what would happen is they could sanction maybe Julius Malema or whatever, but I don't really know if that really has an effect on what's going on in South Africa. You see this all the time with super corrupt governments. I mean, even thinking back to early 2000s, Robert Mugabe, they were all like sanctioned. All they do is if I vacation in Switzerland, I just go somewhere else, So if it's not a European country, they just put the money somewhere else or go somewhere else. So I don't really know. I mean, like, what do you think potentially would be the effect of a sanction? Because it doesn't seem like it really does too much.
Well, it's almost like even the threat of that is making them almost more desperate.
They're doubling down.
Yeah, it's
it
exactly
seems like it.
Trying to really upset the US. I mean, if you look at this Naledi Pandor calling themselves jihadists and this whole MTN saga, I'm hoping that would really focus a lot of attention. And from all accounts, it looks like it will. I suppose there's two sides to this thing. And on the one hand, it's obviously the people who can get out on the refugee program. It's a relatively small minority. So there's a lot of people who cannot, and who still have to sit there and live with these racial laws. And it's becoming more and more difficult. I think to be an average person, if you've got a lot of money and you live in your little bubbles. I had an interview with Paul Harris, who's a billionaire and, was very anti-immigration, but it's easier when you're living in a bubble with, $1 billion in the bank.
100%. You're very isolated. Like if you have some house in like the Zalza or I don't know where, but
that's where I lived. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a nice neighborhood. I'm just saying, it's
no, but it's true.
You don't see it that much, when you're in there. And then you have these like super liberal ladies posting on X. They're like, bad things are happening in South Africa, and they're in like some spa, in Cape Town. I'm like, really? Like, get real. Like, yeah.
Here's a question. What I found is that some South Africans who have left South Africa have become incredibly woke. It's almost like, they think they've seen the light now that they don't have to go back. Is that just me?
I'm trying to think of some concrete examples. Maybe it's a little bit different, Europe versus the US. I think the most people I'm in contact with are very conservative. They've remained conservative. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I know anyone that's gone the other the other route.
Well, we found it, they're very quick to call you racist and to, say you've left and you're a racist, but they are here as well. So
yeah, well, look, it's that cycle of good men create good times, create bad men. It's kind of like that. You forget very easily when things are super comfortable and you don't have to deal with that stuff. And then all the, wishy-washy, make you feel good inside stuff seem really great, even though it doesn't really help anybody. So I think that's kind of maybe what's going on with that too.
Absolutely. And from an activism point of view, I guess the other question is, what is going to make it change? So, if you have a long-term view versus what's happening now. So right now, if I hear what you're saying, is your advice is if you can, just go. But it's not a good long-term solution for South Africa.
No, it's not. To be honest with you, I don't really have any answers. I follow quite closely like other activists like Rob Hersov and all of these people that are very much involved in politics. And I like what he's saying about, stop giving your money to these charity groups. If you have money to give it to like the Freedom Front Plus or someone, because you're going to have to start basically bottom up, supporting a party and, I guess trying to get more support. But the other issue, as you know, in South Africa is the extreme poverty. It's so difficult. Like, I don't really know how you bridge that gap, because it does seem like it's easy for those voters to default to, oh, you're oppressed and here's like 50 Rand, come and vote for us. I don't know how you address that, with that extreme levels of poverty. It's real difficult to, shift mindsets, and without like proper education, I don't have a solution. But he says, so two of the things he mentioned is obviously don't go the charity route because it's just kind of masking what the ANC isn't doing in the country. And they mentioned something else. I forgot who her name was. A very famous PhD doctor he had on one of his shows that talked about vouchers and voucher systems. That's something we have in Florida, by the way, too. It's actually wonderful. School vouchers we have in Florida, but you can actually do it with anything, health, you name it. So what it does is the state gives you a voucher. So it's not money you can just, it's not like a SASA card or whatever, but you take it. And so it, instead of having to rely on like public schools here, it covers the tuition of a private school. So you're making the parent the consumer. So you are like basically, it's like pure capitalism, but it works really well. There's a lot of these, bad schools over here that have been forced to close down because people can now afford private schools, So that was another solution he gave, which I thought was pretty good. So, but, in terms of from the US side, it's, like I said, we can sanction, and we have that AGOA agreement, which I guess is probably going to go away, which it doesn't really help, unfortunately, the farmers in South Africa.
No, and, just today they announced a closure of part of the steel company, Mittal or whatever, with a bunch of jobs and motor companies. The problem is it just exacerbates the poverty and, that leads to crime again because these people need to eat. So it's just a vicious circle. So, yeah, I mean, the one thing that I guess that comes up in every discussion is obviously the security issue. Most of the people on this refugee program have been exposed. Is that correct, to crime and some threat to their lives?
Yes. So the formal requirements to qualify for the refugee program does not include you have, let me put it this way, past persecution and fear of future persecution are both valid reasons to apply for this program. So you don't have to just apply on the basis of, I was in a farm attack, or I was, something bad happened to me. I'm willing to give everybody some resources, some stuff I've been working on, articles. There's another professor that does, he's an immigration lawyer that's been talking a lot about this as well. But essentially what I'm trying to say is a lot of people that have been accepted into the program haven't per se experienced brutal violence, if I could put it that way. So they have been accepted on the grounds of, I fear for my life because of, you already know, X, Y, and Z. There's so many things you can mention. For instance, this kill the Boer chant, that's the Supreme Court of South Africa has essentially decided that it's not hate speech. It can be sung. Julius Malema himself calling for his members to slit the throat of whiteness. We talked about Ronald Lamola, who used to be, I guess, was it the housing minister? At that point, he said something along the lines of that they can't guarantee the safety of minority South Africans if they don't willingly give up their land. So these things all count toward a valid fear of future persecution. So according to the United States government, that is a valid reason to apply for the program as well.
And in this process of people applying for the program, there seems to be a lot of fake news as well out there, and people spreading rumors that this is stopping or that's not going to happen, or the government stopping Kenyans working on the program. What is your sense of that?
So I can tell you one thing is, when the program started, it was pretty chaotic. There was a 60-day pause on aid money from the US government for a refugee program in general. Because, there's been a lot of illegal immigration and stuff into the US. So it was a little bit of a rocky start. But the program hasn't stopped. The Kenyan group is called CWS, and they are a government contractor. So they would be your initial point of contact. And so all they do is the initial screening. They're just going to ask you a bunch of questions about, are you a minority, et cetera, and what is your basis for applying for the program? And then you do a little bit more of an in-depth interview with them, and you get passed on to actual State Department workers, at the embassy. So they're the one contractor. There's another smaller group that it seems like they are going to be doing some contract work for the US government too. But in terms of did the program stop? No, the program's going. It was been kind of like a slow start, but it seems like there's about 2 flights a month that's going out to the US now. So picking up pace slowly. So yeah, don't believe any of the online rumors, but I will say if you are looking for pretty up-to-date information about the program, Colonel Chris Wyatt, he gives like great updates. And the other person I mentioned before is Professor G. He's got a YouTube channel as well. I mean, we can drop the links for those. So if you're interested in the program, I can definitely share that with you guys.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you. And there's a couple of, quite a lot of people who are very active on TikTok. I spoke to one of them, Zelda Puerta, who lives in Austin. She's been there for 30 years. She was an ordained minister. And she's clearly taken up the task of feeding information on TikTok as an example.
Yeah, no, there's definitely people all over the place, but for the most accurate information, I will say you can follow the US Embassy in South Africa's website. They have all the information on there. So if you're not sure, like if, even if I said it or Chris said it or whoever said it, and you don't really know if you should trust it, just go ahead and go to that website. It's, that's the official page. So I'd always just confirm on there. So, yeah.
Okay. And is there a finite number on how many refugees they will allow?
Yeah, so there is. I don't know total, but there is a cap on the amount of refugees the US allows, I guess, every year. Now, I can't really tell you for certain what it is, but it's less than 100,000, I think, per year. I don't know if they'll change the rules because it's like an in-program refugee or whatever, but according to Chris and everybody else, it does seem like it's not unlimited. So besides the fact that, like I said, they haven't really been processing people that quickly. Hopefully next year it'll be quicker and more people would, be able to come in. So.
Okay. And in terms of your advice to people who are thinking about it, what would you say to them?
There's a couple things I would say. If you have children, I would strongly suggest you apply for it. Just as we talked about this before, try and get them a future. I've had a lot of people that have contacted me saying, well, I'm very comfortable in South Africa. I have a lot of savings and all of that. Now that becomes more tricky. What do I do? Because do I want to go to the US and start over? I mean, Jan, you're probably aware of what you need to do to start over in a new country. It's you have the government here is going to assist you for 3 months with housing and with a little stipend and some medical insurance. But after a while, it becomes okay, I need to do something. So consider that, but then also weigh that up against, how we were saying the trajectory of South Africa is not looking too great, right? So what do I do? Do I roll the dice and see if things go better? So that's something to consider. The other thing is, if you want to apply for the program, the main thing is to have a valid passport. That's probably the one thing that, is kind of like a requirement. I think they could probably work with you if you don't, but most of the time they're going to ask you for your passport, your little green passport.
Groen Mamba.
Yes, the Groen Mamba. Have that one ready. Pets are another consideration. Right now, there is no assistance from the US government to relocate pets. You can do that in your own capacity. I know of a couple that has done it recently that went over on the refugee program. So what they did is they left their pets with friends. And there's a bunch of companies that, do pet relocation. So they just shipped the little doggy over. So that's something else.
And work-wise, obviously, a lot of people frown upon doing some menial jobs. And that Lady Zelda said, at times they held down 3 jobs, and people, you have to put yourself out there. I guess that's very true in America.
100%. I mean, some people are obviously very lucky. They are in industries that are desired. For instance, like the medical industry, I don't think you're going to have a problem finding a job. But sometimes you may end up doing something that you didn't plan on doing, or it's going to take you some time to get the dream job you want to do. So, be willing to do some other things. I do a lot of like on my X channel, I do a lot of tips on, getting your resume ready and what type of jobs are hot in the US and that. So, and we have AI these days. So what I always recommend people do is look at your industry. Like, let's say you want to be an engineer. Okay, so go look at what are like the top states for the type of engineering you want to do, and then weigh up like your earning potential versus the cost of living. Like here in Florida, it's like super expensive. But if you went to like Kansas or Mississippi, it's a lot cheaper to live there, but maybe there's not as many opportunities for what you want to do. So that's kind of like something you want to look at. And then you can even use Grok to like make a budget for you. Like, hey, this is the type of lifestyle I want to do. I want to live in a house like this. I have 3 kids, and it'll work out a little budget for you and kind of like, pin like how much you would have to make. And is that possible in that state? So that's probably something kind of important for people to look at too.
I mean, one other thing, you may know that I had a chat to Kirsten Holcrow, who's got Emigrate to USA, that website where she gives visa assistance. Would you say to people, maybe you should consider both options? Because, I mean, that is a complex web of requirements to apply for a specific visa or skills visa or whatever.
Honestly, like, I don't know a lot about like how difficult it is to get a work visa. I know some people that have been on work visas here, and it does seem like a pretty involved process. If it was me in that position, I would probably first try the refugee program. And if that doesn't work out, I would go visa route. It's a lot longer, like if you get a work visa, it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to renew it every year. And I don't know when you get to apply for like getting a green card. I think it's like 10 or 12 years or something. Whereas if you did get accepted on the refugee program, it's 1 year until you get your green card. And then 5 years total, you'll be a US citizen. So like I became a citizen in 2018. So when we got here with our diversity visa, so we already started with the green card. So it only took 5 years. So, and then we became US citizens. So yeah, I mean, I think people have it in their head that, oh, you're a refugee. There's kind of like a stigma behind it. But I will say that no one I've known that has gone over on the program has been stigmatized. Like they were able to find jobs. You're able to work immediately. You're not like you're on asylum. So it's nothing like that. But yeah, I can't tell people not to do that. If they feel like, okay, there's definitely an industry that is like a top potential to get a work visa and you'd rather do that, go for it. I'm just telling you, it definitely takes longer and there's not really a guarantee that it'll lead to like a permanent residency status, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That is really very interesting, this whole stigma thing, because I think the mainstream media in South Africa, no names, no pactoral, but they would love to stigmatize the whole refugee thing. You're a Trump supporter and et cetera, et cetera. So they try and make people look bad, which is clearly not the case when they arrive in the US. And I think it's important for people to know that.
100%. The interactions that I've had with people that have come over with the refugee program have said that the Americans have been nothing but very kind and friendly to them. And don't listen to the media here either, like the CNNs and whatever. that's not like normal America, that's not what you'll find like in little towns and places here. So yeah, there's no shame in it. I think people should just take the opportunity and try. I mean, the worst they can say is no, right? So you tried and you see what happens. So that would be my advice. I would go for that first. And then if that doesn't work, you can try work visa. You can always apply for the diversity visa. Like I said, it's also kind of like super rare. And there's no assistance from the government, by the way, for a diversity visa. You're going to come over on your own dime, like no assistance with rent or any of that stuff. So just a little caveat on that type of visa.
Okay, and for maybe we'll get to the end. For people considering, what is the kind of waiting time that you're experiencing now or hearing about now?
So it's kind of difficult to tell. So the executive order was signed back in February, and like I said, they weren't really set up. It's only now that we know CWS is the contractor, and so I don't know like when you would get contacted, but I know that people that have been contacted, it took them about 2 months to go through the whole process. So from the time they were, hey, we got your statement of interest to, okay, where do you want to go, was about 2 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Obviously, people would be anxious about that. The one, maybe last question is, there's very little actual publicity of talking to people who are on the program. Here and there, you've seen guys making videos, but I would assume that the US government is frowning upon that, or trying to keep kind of, I wouldn't say a lid on it, but trying to keep the publicity to a minimum.
I think so. I actually honestly think they made a mistake by doing that whole like press thing where they had those first people come over. We were all obviously super excited to see them there. However, it's put a lot of pressure on those refugees. I have literally gotten calls from like news agencies that I've never heard of that said, hey, do you have so-and-so's number that came over on the program? And I'm like, guys, don't talk to people because you are going to like, get spammed by people that don't like you. So like I was explaining, like the media people, like stay away from them. It does seem like the dust is kind of settled and people kind of forgot about it, which is good to me. I think so. So yeah, I mean, if I was somebody in South Africa that are, considering the program, I would absolutely tell no one. I wouldn't tell anyone that you applied. And then I wouldn't even tell anyone that you got accepted. Of course, close family, that's different, but don't, make yourself a target. Don't, when you go to Home Affairs, don't be like, hey, I want a passport because I want to go over on the refugee program. Like I wouldn't do that. That's just kind of like general tips I would give. You can become an activist like me once you're once you're in the States, then no problem. So, but yeah.
I think the important thing is that people must stop judging. I think there's so much judgment going on, and I've said it in my last episode that in my own case, I have two feelings. One is one of grief because my family is separated and the kids don't see each other and the grandkids and so on. And then there's this other feeling of absolute rage for what's going on in South Africa and forcing people. My daughter had to leave. She's a highly qualified CFA, but, because she was working in the pensions industry, it was a disaster. And now she's got a fantastic job in Ireland, and it's lost to South Africa. And that's the problem is, everyone has his own reason for leaving. A lot of people that I talk to have been involved in crime and had crime. Others have gone back, for people that didn't work out. So I always say, and maybe this is a closing thought, and in terms of the people that do come over there and find it hard, is don't look over your shoulder and give it a chance,
100%. I think that's the one thing I try and tell people over and over, on YouTubes and whatever, is that if you go somewhere, really try and become, a citizen of that country, like become involved. If you're religious, join a church. If you are into sports, start watching football, like in here. Like that's what I did. I liked rugby. I still like rugby, but I started like watching college football, and I met friends at, the college I went to. And that's really big in the US. The more like immersed you are in a culture and like you become more part of it. And then that also buffers like feelings of loneliness and depression on your side. And you'll find the transition becomes a lot easier. So I would like try and become a part of something, wherever you go. Like if you're in Europe, I don't know, just find a group of people that some kind of hobby you like, and just go out and do stuff. That's kind of what I would say. So most people that go back, there's that feeling of nostalgia. which I don't blame. Like I said, from my side, no judgment. Like if it is very traumatic to go to a different country and start a new life. It's not easy. So if you want to go back and whatever, I have a lot of sympathy for you. I'm just saying, like, what I find is worked for me. And that's just, kind of from my perspective, what helped me adjust to life here.
That is absolutely super advice. Thank you so much for sharing your activism and everything in the US. How can people contact you?
Thank you for having me. So I am more than willing to give you my email address if you want to share that with people, or if you can send me a WhatsApp. I'm on, like I said, I'm on X. It's Andrea_SPOOK, like spook in Afrikaans. Yes. So I don't know why that I made it that. Honestly, I have no idea why I did that. But anyway, it's stuck. So it's on there.
It sounds like you're a spy.
Yeah, I know, right? Like the ghost of Andrea or something. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I'm all over the place. Yeah, I don't mind people contacting me. I like, it's like I said, it's kind of like a it's not just activism for me. It's almost a religious thing. Like I really had it like very strong. I felt really strongly like I had to, kind of help people. Like people help me here. So I felt like, okay, it's my time to help them. So I don't mind if you, have a quick question or you want to, talk your heart out about leaving South Africa. I'm always, available. So you guys can reach out to me anytime.
Okay. Well, we can add your email address at the end of the notes, or if you want to give it here, we can put it with the episode, whatever's easiest for you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You can put it in your notes. That's totally fine. I think people look at that. It's pretty easy to reach and, copy off of your computer. So.
Okay, awesome. But as you say, at Andrea_spook.
Spook, yes.
On X. And
on X, yes.
And Andrea's very, very active on X with a lot of information. And it's been a fascinating conversation. I didn't know a lot about this program. We obviously see a lot. So thank you so much for sharing and for what you're doing for the people. I really appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. And thank you for you. I think your podcast is also very helpful. It's basically what I'm doing. It's just you're giving a lot of people's perspective and they can make informed decisions about, what route they want to take, whether it be leave or stay or, it's all out there. So it's great.
If you enjoyed my discussion with Andrea and would like to hear more about experiences of South Africans who have left South Africa for a better future, why not subscribe on your favorite platform? If you would like to share your own story, contact us on jan@relocatedSouthAfrican.com or relocatedSouthAfrican@gmail.com, and we'll put some more contact details for Andrea on our show notes. Until next time.